son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. Oh, yeah. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
Welcome back to the Totally Legitimate Business. And today I'm joined live in studio by good friend and fellow podcaster, Dakota McCormick. Yeah! Welcome to the show, buddy.
Happy to be here.
This is awesome. So, first of all, why don't you tell me how you've been since the last time you were on here? I know that you've been up to a bunch of really cool shit over on your pod, and especially with like the new documentary style stuff. Why don't you give the people a little bit of a descriptor about what you've gotten yourself into since then?
Hell yeah. So I guess I was on probably last winter, and since then the channel that I'm a part of, ITR Boxing, has like a deal with OnlyFans now, a sponsorship deal.
Fuck yeah.
So we've been starting to produce more long form content outside of like podcasting and on-site coverage. So we've started releasing documentaries, and we've been doing this series called The Fight Life, which is kind of like, an inside access look into training camp, kind of get some of the nitty gritty that you're not going to get from the standard promotional content.
Polished stuff.
Yeah. So right now I'm working with a fighter from Paterson, New Jersey named Shadeja Green, who
shout out to that documentary. I watched it.
Thank
as soon
you.
As you told me about
so
it,
you
I was
watched
like,
the first one.
Dude, as soon as I watched it, my YouTube feed got inundated with a bunch of other Shadeja Green shit. And I was like, damn, you like, it's incredible. It's just been so cool to watch you say, I'm going to start fucking doing this. And now you're getting big names.
Yeah.
Like people that are on fucking posters and shit are coming on your show and talking in a level of frank that they're not going to talk on some ESPN interview.
Yeah, I think the cool thing, not just about my podcast, but everything we're doing at ICR, is we are getting guys and female fighters that are fighting on big platforms. We're not always getting the main event fighters, but those are the guys that get highlighted by the promotion anyway.
Right.
We're getting the guys that people are going to see fight that you're not going to get that backstory. So I feel like we kind of fill that void. And I think Shadeja is just, if I'm being honest, I think she's the best female fighter on the planet. Yeah. And I feel like lucky to just be in the gym with her when I get to go. And like, it's been a crazy experience. And episode 2 is going to be coming out like in a couple of weeks.
Hell yeah.
We just got done shooting everything. And I'm not breaking any news here, but she's fighting for a world title in December.
Yeah.
So,
well, but in a way you kind of are, because it's so funny to me, dude. You just asked.
Yeah.
You started doing this, and you've done it now enough to where if somebody says, well, how can you prove it? You just go look at my page.
Right.
And you'll see who's been on my show.
Keep the catalog.
But it's just been super cool to watch you get in there. And I feel like, again, there's a level of frank that these fighters are with you that they aren't with anyone else. And it's not to say they're speaking crazy or they're talking out of their ass or anything. They're just a little more comfortable having it's a side of a fighter that, from my perspective, Joe Schmo watcher of fights, I never really get to see that. I always see the promoted, heavily polished final image of that person, and not the real subtlety that makes them a person.
Well, I think one of the funny things about kind of all sports media, but it's particularly obvious in boxing, is there's like the trope of you want like the guy in the suit who talks real clean. But at the same time, that guy's probably never been in a boxing gym.
Yeah, right.
So there's an instant disconnect between the fighters and who's platforming the fights. So me just having been in boxing gyms my whole life, like I feel like I can talk to them on like a gym level that, and there's a lot of great commentators out there, but that a lot of the older generations of commentators can't relate to them. Like they maybe didn't get hit in the face.
Yeah.
They maybe haven't been in the gym. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's just a little different. So
it really is.
I just hope that's what I bring to it, man. And it's been a lot of fun. And so check out The Fight Life, episode 2 with Shadeja Green.
Sure.
Coming out.
We'll link all the stuff here in the episode details and stuff. But yeah, dude, it's been super cool to watch you do that. Obviously stuff is still rolling with the pod. We got you hooked up with the Bigs, the other boxing podcast.
Dude,
I helped
he's fighting
a
nonstop.
monster. Dude, he is a monster.
He's fought like 6 times in the last 2 months.
Monster.
It's nuts. Dude, why I looked at his box rec. That's where they like show fighters' records. And before I had him on the show, he was like maybe 10-0. And then the next time I looked, he's 16-0. And I'm just like, dude, the kid, because I know he was injured for a while. He didn't get to fight for a bit. He's just been like more active than any fighter in boxing. It's fucking
beast.
crazy.
He's a beast. And you know, it's so funny. Like I really started messing with them a long time ago. And they are about their fucking business.
You know his trainer, Yoel? Dude, I don't know. Maybe you know this or maybe you don't, but Yoel Judah is the father of a legend in Brooklyn, Zab Judah, who's one of the greatest fighters to ever come out of Brooklyn.
I think they had him on the show.
Yeah, he fought Floyd Mayweather. He was a multi-division world champion. So Justin's in the gym with guys that know what they're doing.
I want to say, I can't remember, and he may have told you this, when he was like really starting to take it seriously, he got in with Evander Holyfield's camp, I think.
Yeah.
So
that's
like,
crazy.
And that was from when he started.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he's dude, he's got his eyes on the prize. I don't, even talking to him too, he's like, even he doesn't know what to expect. Like he doesn't know what is coming next, but bro, he's fighting there.
Yeah.
He's gonna
take
it all the way there.
A lot of these boxers today, I'm not all of them, but some of them outprice themselves.
Yeah.
You know, like they assume their value, or they like, you know, if they I think they think after Mayweather, it's like, if I say I'm worth this, I'm worth this.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily. You got to kind of earn that.
Yeah, sure.
And Justin's just kind of like doing it the hard way. You know, he's just in the trenches doing it. So shout out Justin, big time Biggs, bro.
Shout out Biggs, whole Biggs family.
Shout out Biggs versus Biggs podcast.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. Yeah, that's another. It's another hilarious scenario. Like, I always appreciated when the world gets smaller.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like when, especially too. Like the reason I got hooked up with them is because I work with one of their relatives, and she and I would always be chopping it up, and she's like, "You do audio," and she's like, you know, trying to get them to do a show, and we got them working on that show, but you start talking to people outside of the normal context, like what you do at the job. Jobs always fucking bore the shit out of me, and I'm always more interested in what what people are doing outside of the job. And this is another prime example.
Yeah,
you know, like how many music events did we work before we realized we were both into audio?
Several.
Shit. Like seriously, it was a while. It was a while,
bro.
We clicked on that.
We met twice. Do you remember this? I'm about to blow your mind, dude. We met twice, bro. We met twice. So we had done those Boston callings together. I'd seen you at Gumball. We had worked together before multiple times. And I was hanging out with my boy Mo, and his tracks were sounding real nice. And I was like, yo, who's doing your shit? And he's like, oh, it's my buddy James. But he doesn't give any context into what James it is. So I get your number. We've been like going back and forth. And then at one point we like figured it out, and I called you. I was like, James. Like, James. You're like, yeah, dude.
Dude, that's amazing. I didn't realize that Mo was the connector. I completely had forgotten about that.
Yeah, bro. We met twice.
That's amazing. That is amazing. That's the same thing. Shout out to Mo. That's the same thing too. Like, how many jobs I worked with Mo before I realized he was into music stuff too. I don't know. The jobs are always a fucking means to an end. You know, it's not, even if we had a job doing music, at some point that would just start to feel like a job. Yeah. And ultimately the thing that you do for money is not who you are.
Especially with all the freelance shit that we met doing, it's like everyone's just funding their projects in a sense.
Yeah.
You know, like we're all just sort of funding our lifestyle, and we're around showbiz anyway. And so that kind of work is just readily available if you're willing to learn it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Sure. And it's just funny, like how you gravitate toward things, you know, like we the things that we were doing before we started doing events, it was all leading toward, like I was playing shows. I'm sure you were playing shows too. So it's like a natural progression, like, oh, how do I be around shows, but also make some money so that I'm not sitting at a desk?
Well, and who am I around organically?
Yeah, right.
Like what kind of opportunities are going to present themselves just by who I'm around?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that like, especially like, I know you started really young. I started really young. It's like, you're just around who you're around, and that starts to, you know, mold your future endeavors in a sense, you know? So yeah, it is pretty cool actually, that every time I've discovered at work what somebody's doing like for real what they're doing, I'm always like, yes, dude.
And it's so much more interesting. Like, even if they're amazing at whatever job you're doing, that what they do outside of it is always so much more interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, that's what I really care about. And honestly, anymore, that's really after like we started connecting on music shit, that's when I 100% made the switch. It was like, I'm not relating to people within the job. I'm the question that I'm asking them is, what do you do outside of here?
Yeah. And what's this doing?
Yeah, right. What is the purpose that this is serving? And I know this isn't your life. What is your life? The story is always much more interesting.
And then if it is your life, I know that maybe we're not going to be that close.
No,
but
it's 100% an indicator. It's 100% an indicator. And that's like everyone has worked with somebody who takes their job way too seriously, and it's because it's the only thing they have for whatever reason. And I don't know. I refuse to be like that. I know people like yourself refuse to be like that. A ton of our friends refuse to be like that.
Yeah.
So it all makes sense that we would find ourselves in the flexible employment of live events.
Boy, I've had some real flexible employment. Real flexible.
Well,
it's pretty loose right now.
Honestly, bro, it's like, dude, we have stories. Like the shit that not just the crazy shit that we have seen at shows, like being backstage at a major event. Like there's tons of crazy shit that you see backstage. But the weird shit that we've had to do, the unsafe shit we've had to do, like the stories that you get working a job like that are just unmatched. I mean, really, it's like if I were to objectively look at some of the shit that I used to do and think nothing of, I'd be like, that's fucking insane.
Dude, that is
fucking insane.
The first one that immediately popped into my head when you said that was like driving past you at Go Ball while you were changing a tire in the mud. Where I was just like, all right, James is going through it right now.
Bro.
Like
that wasn't even my car.
Yeah.
That was my buddy's car.
Yeah. A lot of those, bro.
That was super brutal. And you know, that was here flooded too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, the stories are hilarious. But anyways, you know, enough about that. Enough about work. We're not here to talk about work. We're here to dive into the sinister underworlds. So when I first told you about this subject, what did you think? Like before you knew anything about it, you saw what I texted you. What did you think?
So I had very base level knowledge of the topic. But the first thing that like I kind of thought of was that series that came out however many years ago, Wild Wild Country, about the Rajneeshis that moved to Oregon.
On Netflix. Yep.
And that was like the first parallel I drew, where it was like a sort of a cult of extremism that was able to assert themselves as an independent government and kind of be able to be exempt from the rules of society. And I think that's a lot of what happened here. It's just they're sort of like the precursor for something like that. You know what I mean? It's pretty gnarly shit.
It's super gnarly. So this is like, there's a number of different ways you can get to this topic. And I've done a few episodes talking about a couple of the things that lead up to it. The biggest, the Operation Paperclip is like an example of American military being okay with taking some Nazis, right? And it was very secretive for a whole bunch of reasons. There's a whole bunch of weird rabbit holes you can get down, including the argument of these people came over and were given very comfortable lives in our government and basically have influence in the future of our government.
Yep.
The machines that we made, the wars that we got into, how we fought those wars.
Yeah.
It's serious shit. But what I think gets glazed over is what happened to the rest of them.
Right.
Like there's a lot of fucking Nazis. Not a lot of them got caught. Very few of them went to trial at Nuremberg. You know, where did the rest of them go? And I first got put onto this a while ago.
Have we said it out loud? What we're talking about?
No, not yet. That's probably
okay.
A good thing.
All right.
So
I just thought of that.
what we're talking about here is a quaint little Bavarian village in the middle of the Amazon called Colonia Dignidad. Let me see if I can pull up a few pictures here. This recently there was a movie with the chick from Harry Potter called Colonia, and it's effectively the story of Colonia Dignidad. But there's also a pretty decent documentary on Netflix that came out. But this is a Bavarian village in the middle of the rainforest. So, and then here's the movie. Emma Watson. There we go. But effectively, so there's Operation Paperclip. Those people are accounted for. We took them. A lot of other Nazis got out through what are called the rat lines. And the rat lines consisted of a number of different organizations that were sympathetic to the Nazi cause, particularly because of the hatred of the Jewish people. So Catholic Church, the Red Cross less for hatred and more for like the do no harm, like the medical perspective of like, I don't like your politics, but I can't hurt you. I'm a doctor. I can't do that. I think anyways. But there was like a very organized effort that these guys had a network to get out. Yep. And there were a couple places that they went, but the place where a lot of them went was South America, because at that time, the Nazis had become very friendly with a lot of fascist dictators in South America. And then after World War II, there's a very heavy focus from the CIA going into South America to try and like undo some of this work, but then also try and advance their own private agendas. So
Yep.
making an even messier mess. But effectively, there is more than enough evidence to suggest that a very large amount of Nazis made it out and they settled in South America. Now, Colonia Dignidad is pretty fucked. There's another place called Bariloche, and I'm not sure if this is exactly where Colonia Dignidad is. We'll look on the map here. Kinda ish, yeah. But even in
south.
Even in this town, Bariloche, there's a very, very heavy German population. And this is on fucking Wikipedia right here. And this is talked about as a conspiracy theory in relation to Adolf Hitler's death, because there's people who suggest that he did make it out. He didn't die. Whoever's body they had.
I've never heard that one, to be honest.
He made it out. And a bunch of other, like the top dogs in the Nazi brass. Now there were a few. This is probably the most well known. Adolf Eichmann. There were a bunch of high-ranking Nazis who were dispersed all around South America. This guy found himself in charge of a Mercedes plant. Funny how that works out. And they eventually I think it's Mossad. Let me come down here and see. World War II. And these are like, again, the worst of the worst. When you think of a horrible idea of a Nazi, it's all the people that got out.
Right.
Seriously, like very few of them really stood justice. A lot of them are unaccounted for, and a lot of them.
Well, it's definitely, we see the entrails of that constantly.
Yeah, dude.
Particularly in America. I mean, it's
100%.
Just like the right wing of America is always sort of flirting with being that. You know what I mean? Like they may not go all the way, but they'll talk like they wanna. You know what I mean? Like it's around.
It is 100% around. And it's not something that ever necessarily went away. This is not 100% related to Bariloche or Colonia Dignidad, but I think it's an important thing. This is an actual picture of Madison Square Garden, and that is a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden.
What year is that?
This is pre-World War II. This is before.
Okay.
Before I think everything.
That's insane, dude.
But this was big.
Yeah.
There was a huge population of folks here who were. That's George Washington.
Yeah.
Right. You see what I mean? Like this is not photoshopped.
Yeah.
This is some real fucking shit. The American Nazi Party.
Right.
And there's also a very strange connection here to something called, before we get too off topic, business plot. No, not business plus. Business plot. Which was a supposed attempt to overthrow the government and instill this guy Smedley Butler in as the
Looks like a good hang.
fascist dictator, but he was onto it, and he basically helped expose the plot. But then, because he exposed the plot, they couldn't go after the people who committed the crimes in the same way as if they had been investigated by legal channels.
Right.
The theory here is that there were a bunch of very prominent bankers, including Prescott Bush, granddaddy of HW.
They're always in the mix,
WHW.
right?
And he worked at a bank or owned a controlling interest in a bank that also had a ton of Nazi money in it. And as we enter the war, the government's like, bro, this Nazi bank, you got to get rid of that. You can't be using that here. And so he and a couple other wealthy businessmen create the business plot to like conspire. This shit is deep.
Yeah.
The shit is, these fuckers got everywhere. Their mentality has infected a million fucking morons all across this planet. It's still huge if you go to a football game in goddamn Europe. It's like there's like occasionally. I
thought you were going to say fucking Alabama.
Well, I mean, definitely down there. But like, you know, at a football game in Europe, this shit didn't go away. There's still tons of people there that are 100% for the ideologies. Anyways, back to fucking Colonia Dignidad. So what's unique? Oh yeah, and Adolf Eichmann too. Israeli Secret Service or Mossad, or I guess the precursor to Mossad, they were finding some of these guys, and Adolf Eichmann they caught, but all the other, like all the most horrendous people that you associate with World War II and being Nazis, none of those people really got caught.
Right.
And even in this thing, Nazis and Bariloche on the Wikipedia page, I'll pull it up here. This is kind of an important point in the sense that somewhere down here was saying how the CIA in 2006, I think, or maybe that was a different page. No, maybe I already got rid of it. Or maybe that was the Eichmann page. Basically, in 2006, documents got declassified that 100% proved that FBI and CIA were tracking some of these guys into South America. There's right around here, there's a fucking sunken
just to be
U-boat.
aware of them.
Yeah,
but not taking action to
not it. We won the war, we stopped the problem, and the rest was like, well, our new enemy is Russia. And even the Nazis that got away to South America, the organization had crumbled.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the whole infrastructure, all of the unity that it allowed it to get to the point that it did had been destroyed. So them going down to South America, it posed little to no threat, and it definitely didn't warrant going to a full-out war. But CIA was effectively causing shadow wars all over South America for the next 20 or 30 years.
Because they knew as long as it wasn't here, it doesn't affect them. You know, they're not really worried about what's happening in a small town in Chile.
Well,
you know,
they're not until the fascist dictatorship wants to nationalize the fruit company,
right,
or the coffee company,
right,
or all the mines. Then it becomes an interest for national security, not something that we want to go to war over, but something that we'll happily send spies down to South America to instigate a coup, or fucking instill a banana dictator. You know what I mean? Just like propagate the local population until they literally pull the guy out of the fucking president's office and kill him in the street.
Yeah, and
then they can guide who gets elected next, somebody who's favorable to American business interests. That's really what it is. It's all about the money.
Yep.
And the whole reason I wanted to bring up the business plot too is because the point that I guess the bigger point that I'm making here is that we don't care about the Nazis if they're doing shit for us. We don't care about the Nazis if it's doing something for us. The only time we care about it is if it's creating a problem for us.
Right.
And then we'll step in. Which is, again, why we were doing all the shit that we were doing in South America in the 50s, is because these guys, these dictators were coming into power and they were already fascist. They loved the Nazi ideology. When they got a bunch of Nazis, they're like, show us how to Nazi, bro.
Right. Show us how to Nazi.
So this is really where the story of Colonia Dignidad begins. All of that shit is happening. And quietly in the background, a small group of Germans build this it's just so funny. I wish they had more pictures of like the juxtaposition. It's a Bavarian village in the middle of the jungle. German style houses, German style everything. All the food is German. All the people are German. Bariloche, that town.
They only speak German.
They only speak German, right? Bariloche, that the other town, like I think it was Bormann or Goering, like it is just accepted in the town that his son is there. His family lives there. There was a really cheesy History Channel show called Hunting Hitler, but they didn't necessarily reveal any new information, but they, in pretty plain detail, talk about the information that does exist in the form that like Ancient Aliens talks about what's known about aliens, right? But they go to Bariloche and a couple other places in South America and they interview these families and like, bro, they come downstairs and they're like, these are my father's belongings. It's like Nazi shit. Like his fucking Hitler Youth knife, his fucking uniform. It's like all these badges. It's like they got out and they got here. Colonia Dignidad is a microcosm of a concentration camp. And that's really what its intent was. When they talked about building this thing, it was under the reason that the government allowed them to do it was that there was going to be some exchange of information. The Nazis were prolific with abuses against humans. And they documented everything, and they none of those scientists died.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Did the German government not say, you won't be punished by us as long as you continue to feed us information from there? That was essentially what happened.
What do you mean?
To Paul Schaefer, actually. Now I've been thinking about him. So now we can say that name, Paul Schaefer, who was like the leader of this cult for a very long time, for almost 50 years.
Yeah.
When he left to go to Chile, he was following some American preacher.
Right.
And we'll get his fucking name. But he followed that dude over there. And the German government, who had punished some Nazis, had said, we won't punish you as long as you continue to feed us information from Chile about what they're doing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And they were both cool with it. And I'm sure they were of course skeptical, and every government is always skeptical, even in deals that they make. But there was a legitimate deal that they had. Yep. We'll give you the safe haven to do what you want to do here. In return, you're going to teach us that. It would be shocking if Paul Schaefer in some way wasn't. This is like, it's not cool to look up to what the Nazis did, right? It's not a cool thing.
Nah, it's pretty whack, guys.
I don't want anyone to think that we're gassing up.
Peak whackness.
It's peak whackness. It's complete disgrace. The worst human behavior, the worst human mindset, the worst of humanity. That's what this shit is. But if we don't analyze it, we can easily find ourselves behaving. Any group of people could find themselves behaving that way if you don't become aware of the major red flags or the things to just completely call out. The point of what I'm trying to say here is that even as a government, when it was together, the Nazis, it was always about infighting. It was always about getting an edge on even your fucking fellow Nazi so that you could have something against him if your nuts were on the line. You'd be like, oh, well, look at this guy's doing, blah, 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 blah. So it would be shocking to me if he wasn't in any way trying to squirrel away pieces of information to go back. That would not shock me in the least bit. But yeah, so this is what we're talking about here. That was a kind of long diatribe. What are your thoughts here on this? Like, when you read through the depravity of this situation, like for me it was, I can't believe I haven't heard of this. That's what was fucking me up for the longest time after I became aware that this is a thing. But
so I also, if you can find what the preacher's name, because I think he's actually a really big piece of this. Because it's like the merging of Nazi ideology with like kind of Christian national. William Branham. Yeah. So William Branham was an American preacher who sort of leaned on that rapture, sort of doomsday wing of Christianity. You know, the end times are coming, Jesus is returning, and on some level that what always kind of seems to come with those kinds of movements are like, we need to go establish a sanctuary or a safe place so that we're all in the same place.
A holy land. Yeah.
A holy land. And so that's, Schaefer became a follower of Branham and had his own church that all sort of started to congregate around him, mirroring Branham's ideology. So once again, we're kind of in the mix, right? We got a fucking dickhead from Kentucky, that's very much in the mix here.
Burkesville, Kentucky.
Yeah. So I think that the origins of how this all started, that a form of Christian nationalism that Nazis very, very much related to.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And I think that's the part that I'm always curious about is the merging of religious extremism and Nazism. I mean, it's such as much as Christianity itself is very flawed, there's like one of the things is thou shalt not kill. That's like a whole rule they have. And yet somehow people like this seem to gravitate to it.
Seems to be the leading cause of death. Yeah, sure.
Right. Exactly. So there's so many contradictions and ironies in how these people chose to operate. But,
well, it's not super crazy because when I first started learning about the rat lines and made the connection that the Catholic Church was like very helpful to the Nazis, I came across something somewhere, read it or heard it in an interview where somebody from the Catholic Church perspective was explaining why that would even be a thing, and they're like, well, from the Church's perspective, Nazis were the lesser evil because the Russians, the communists, would burn the church down.
Right. Yeah.
So, and it just so happened that the Nazis were super anti-Jewish, and that Catholics loved that.
Yeah.
For whatever twisted fucking reason they loved it. They loved that.
Yeah.
That was their commonality there. Like we have the common enemy, and you're less likely to burn the shit down.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah, 100%.
For them. Yeah,
100%. And there's a hilarious side story that deals in particular with fascist leaning Italians and the Catholic Church and people who were definitely associated with the Nazis. I did an episode on it. You should totally look into this though. It's a fucking hilarious story. It's what's that guy's name? It's irrelevant. Anyway, this guy, super powerful, fascist, super rich Italian, creates a clandestine Masonic lodge, which means a Masonic lodge that isn't chartered by a Grand Lodge somewhere, like secret meetings, robes and all this shit. And he was basically running the Italian government all through the 80s. And it ultimately, the demise of a crooked bankster outs the whole thing, and it becomes this big scandal. But it was like big in the 80s, and these dudes are like, they were Mussolini,
right?
Like they were there.
Yeah.
And Italy, and to a lesser extent Germany, but those countries didn't really hold those people accountable. Like even the Nuremberg trials, like look at the sentences.
Yeah,
pretty light.
Yep.
And it's because they can't necessarily say with a provable amount of fact, this person specifically did this. That gets lost in the fog of war. So, and all the judges in Italy or in Germany who were residing over these cases, where do you think they were? They're German judges.
Yeah.
Where do you think they were before the war?
Yep. Well, it's always like any cult that's able to gain power, gain prominence, part of how they do that is having someone in the power structure that supports them.
Yeah.
Right? Like any of them. I mean, there was like very famous celebrities that were in NXIVM.
Yep.
There's been a lot of people that were a part of that Australian-based church that had the cool-looking pastor that Bieber was in.
Hillsong.
Yeah, Hillsong. You know what I mean? like they, all of them have. Look at the evangelical movement. I mean, we have like a whole political party that's like their guys.
Yeah.
So it's and these guys were brilliant at that, and I'm sure you're going to segue into that. But having, essentially Nazi torture camp employees there to show the Chilean government how this is how you extract information from people.
Yeah, quite literally.
you know, that's how they were able to do what they did, because they provided something to the power structure.
Well, and again, just like our government was willing to overlook all the seedy shit that those scientists got into in Germany when we took them over into our country and our science echelon. Same thing with a lot of the Argentinian governments were fascist.
Right.
So they're immediately like, all right, we completely agree with you. Less interested in the whole Jewish thing, but yeah, sure, whatever. And show us how to torture. We'll give you safe haven here. You can do what you want to do. This is the thing that blows my mind about this place, is when you look at it. Now it's literally a resort called Bavarian Village. Like, you can go stay there, and it's like, oh, look.
It's a fucking resort,
yes,
dude.
And here's what's strange. Who is going to the jungle in Argentina and thinking, I want to go to the Bavarian Village, and not think for a moment, how the fuck is there a Bavarian Village in the middle of Chile?
So let me ask you this.
Why are all these people speaking German in the middle of Argentina?
Are these both still places that are on some level operational, or has it essentially been emptied out and now it is just used as a tourist?
Okay, so in that show Hunting Hitler, they go to Colonia Dignidad.
Okay.
And just like with some other cults that get cleaned up, right? Like the leader gets taken care of somehow, and there's still a bunch of cult members there, and they're still living the cult way, but they open up a restaurant.
It's scattered.
You know what I mean?
The leadership starts to scatter.
And it's like a little more, we're just trying to maintain what little life we can here. We're still living by the crazy rules, but we're not being as overtly crazy about it. There's the people that still live there believe in all the things that were espoused there.
Right.
That, or they can't leave because it's a cult-like scenario where they got you.
Right.
And it's difficult for you to fucking break away from that for a number of different reasons. In this case, you're in the middle of the fucking jungle.
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere. Like, for you to even, this place, here's what's crazy too. Like, you go there as a guest, it's got barbed wire fences all around it, just like a concentration camp.
Yep.
Shit's angled inward to keep you in. It's a prison camp. It is a legit prison camp. There's tunnels all over the place. There's like this was like pretty advanced for back then, but they had ground sensors so they could tell if you were trying to escape. You could get around the entire facility through these underground passageways, because another thing that the Nazis were prolific at is tunneling and building underground facilities, massive bunkers, like some of the craziest shit. They will occasionally find one sporadically as they are excavating some area, but you can see them. They don't necessarily show it off when you go to Colonia Dignidad, but you can see like the trenches, so you can move from one area to another, and it was really just like torture chambers. Like, and dude,
so let's talk about real quick who was getting tortured.
Yeah,
because that's a nice variety of people. They had, first of all, the Chilean government was using it as their own personal torture chamber for people that were against their shit. And then the Colonia Dignidad leadership was using it to sort of like torture / like molest their members to get information out of them. I always thought, like, how crazy would that be that you're like in a Nazi Christian group, you move to this piece of land with them, and then you become like the victim of it. Like, I don't know. I read 1984 recently for the first time, so I've been thinking a lot about doublethink.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of doublethink going on there, bro. Like,
dude, there's that quote that's like, when they came for this group, I said nothing. When they came for this other group, I said nothing. When they came for me, there was nobody there to protect me.
Yeah,
it's the same shit.
Yeah,
it's the same shit. And yeah, I mean, really, it gets down, like with any of these cult situations, it boils down to, so they don't have a ton of Chilean, political dissidents to work on. So they start cannibalizing their own, and they would just start forcing people who like didn't do their farm chores correctly to go through military. Dude, I won't even get into the descriptions of what the shit that they used to do, but read some of the fucking description. I'm sure you did. I'm telling people that are listening, read some of the descriptions of the shit that these fucking people would do. Just like common business. And Paul Schaefer is again another one of these like where does he find the time to do this?
So
he's fucking prolific, and he's got to be awake 24 hours to be doing this.
Let's go back to this real quick because it's funny. We were talking about our friend Mr. Epstein just earlier.
Yes, our friend Mr. Epstein.
So let's talk about why this guy left Germany. Didn't he leave Germany because all he could do was fuck kids?
Basically,
I mean, he just could not stop fucking kids, this guy.
Yeah, no, seriously.
And part of why he was under scrutiny from the German government was for that very reason. And so he wasn't just fleeing to create a Holy Land. He was fleeing so that he didn't have to go to prison for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And that's the deal that got cut, essentially.
Yeah.
Was you help us establish our ideology in this part of the world, and we'll allow you to go fuck their kids. As long as you're not fucking our kids.
Yeah. I mean, really. And again, like prolific predatory behavior. Another reason why the Catholic Church has no problem with the Nazis. So the strange thing about this guy really is there's a lot of similarities, and I'm just reading this here too now. This guy, William Branham, was also an influence on Jim Jones, another guy who goes to the middle of the jungle, starts a commune, and forces them to commit mass suicide. But Schaefer is interesting because really being a predator was his main goal. You're totally right. That's what his life was about. And based on the abuse that was suffered by literally everyone there, that's what he used Colonia Dignidad as. There's a comparable individual named Jimmy Savile, who is a prolific predator in the UK. He was in the upper echelons of UK society, and upon his death, it comes out that he would raise money for these hospitals. They'd give him a key to the hospital, and then he would use that key to abuse everyone in the hospital.
And he was like a TV host, right?
Yeah, dude. He was like one of the first big time popular announcers for BBC. He hosted this show called Top of the Pops, which was basically like TRL, but in the UK going back to the 60s. It was like the show. Everyone knew who he was. He was a major celebrity. No one would besmirch his name when he was alive.
It would have been like if Letterman for us,
yeah.
You know.
If it came out like Cosby, but Savile was way worse than Cosby. But that, like, you know, he's out in the open.
Yep.
You know, and in hindsight, hearing some of Cosby's victims talk, it's like he wasn't even being subtle about it. People weren't even trying to step to Bill Cosby because they fucking were scared of the power that he had, and rightly so. But there's a lot of crossover between those types of personalities. It's just funny to me that so often it ends with them in the middle of the goddamn jungle, or like in a compound somewhere, you know, fucking Waco style at a bare minimum.
The Source family, that was another one that was exactly like that. You know what I mean? And they had restaurants in LA that all the fucking hippie ass liberal people would go and eat at, but they don't really know what they're supporting. It's not just a bunch of granola people. It's like a true prison camp as well. Yeah,
seriously. I guess there's the funny thing is, like, which came first? The Nazi or the cult? You know, which comes first? It's like, because I imagine we could go through history and find similar but less structured, or maybe as obnoxious examples as the Nazis. But why does it always end out that we're gonna go to the middle of fucking nowhere and start a commune, and ultimately it's isolation?
Yep.
That's like the big thing, is how do we get all these people so that they're only around us and they only hear what we're saying, and they only agree with what we're saying.
And for the leadership, isolate yourself for your own safety, right? You don't want to go to prison.
Yep.
You want to be able to not be watched.
Yep.
And then for the members, it's like, I'm isolating you so that you stop kind of thinking for yourself. You lose contact with your family or other people that might go like, hey, what are you doing over there? You know, like anybody
Seems kind of like a cult.
Anybody that would use critical thought, they want to cut you off from that. They want to know everything bad that you ever did, so they can hold that over your head. If you speak out against us, I'm going to tell them that you did that. And so then now they really got you by the balls. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
You're not going anywhere after that. And they got all your dirt.
Yeah. Well, and in so many cases, like human one thing that I think gets glazed over is the mastery of manipulative psychology that these people have like anyone that gets to this point, Paul Schaefer level, they have an understanding of human psychology down. And the Nazis were super advanced in their ability to propagate information. They were super advanced in a lot of headier mind shit that America didn't get into until we brought all their scientists over and we're like, wait, you were doing this, why don't you and there's a serious thread to suggest that MK Ultra, all of that was just a continuation of Nazi experiments.
Right. And then you cut to when we were growing up and it's really just like Rumsfeld and Copper Green, and it evolved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, for sure. We literally took we took these guys and we put them in our government and we gave them advisory roles. They influenced the future. And definitely by the time of Rumsfeld, bro, there was no separation at all. They were entrenched. And that was, it could be made that, the argument could be made that maybe the Third Reich didn't totally end. Maybe it just continued in a different form. Like if you really start looking at who these people are and where they got to, and I mean, dude, even there's aspects of the Nazis still that they refuse to talk about as that was dumb as other shit. In somewhere in South America, it was suggested that they were building a facility to process nuclear weapons.
Right.
There was another facility that it was like a water treatment plant or a hydro water facility in Denmark or Norway or somewhere, and it could create heavy water, which I think is extra ionized water with an extra hydrogen molecule, whatever. And they controlled that, and they theoretically could have had the ability to do that. But it's just, again, it's like either they don't want to talk about it in the sense that, for me, it's like, why don't we talk about these things? Why don't we talk about the fact that our government knew that a lot of these really important Nazi guys who we wanted made it safely to South America? Why were we watching them and doing nothing about it? And really what it all comes back to again is America wants to be everybody's friend, but only if it serves them. So we want to be friends to the Jewish people in Israel and help them establish their place and to do their thing. But we also don't want them to know that we took a bunch of Nazis, like people who were definitely dirty, they had blood on their hands, and we gave them comfortable lives here in America. That's why we don't talk about it. Because we have to play this, the double speak.
Well, there's always it comes back to America just because the root of this cult is an American preacher. But we always, in America, those people always get, and when I say those people, I mean kind of religious extremists, they always get some kind of leniency that other people don't get. You know what I mean? If you sympathize with that sort of thinking, you're always going to get treated different. I think the perfect example is, this might be a little controversial, but during the pandemic, any of the George Floyd protests were littered with, the craziest National Guard cops imaginable. The military got sick on them, right? Cut to the fucking insurrection. There's 10 mall cops on the front. You know what I mean? Yeah. They knew what was going to happen. The president was talking about it publicly, but because it's those people,
right?
They kind of get escorted in the door and we'll clean up after them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And this was a perfect example of that, bro. They always just get a certain amount of sympathy because if the Western power structure goes, we'll hold them accountable, there's going to be some names in there that you don't like.
Yeah, no, seriously. Seriously. It isn't shocking at all that America is, by way of William Branham, it is in some way responsible for all this shit. We're like the epicenter of cults of personality.
Yep.
Other countries did it, but we really refined that. Our major export for a long time was entertainment. Still, Hollywood is a major influence on the world. But they in America is a Christian nation. As much as it's supposed to be, freedom of religion, this is a Christian nation.
It's treated as such.
And there's,
and anytime we operate as it's advertised, like freedom of religion, The religious people always go, well, what about us?
Yeah, right.
Like, no, you
What do
already
you
have.
mean, what about you? You've got literally everything.
Yeah.
It's never enough.
Yeah.
And you know, will we ever get over that? Will that ever change? Like, people have been fighting over goddamn religion, and we say this now as there's literally a religious war and another religious war that just started the other day. Will people ever get over that? And I don't know if we will. And in some respects, like, especially with these fucking hardliner conservative Christian fuckers, these motherfuckers want Armageddon. It's written in the book.
Yep.
That means Christ is coming back. Whatever I can do to usher that in, I'm going to do it because that's God's will, and I'm trying to enact God's will here on earth. This is words that they fucking say. I don't know if you've ever looked into, this is probably a whole nother podcast, but the C Street complex.
No, actually.
Dude, okay, so there's this, it's called The Family. There's a Netflix documentary called The Family.
Oh, yep.
So
let's go.
This kind of ties in a bunch of, no, not this. Yeah, there we go. This ties in to a bunch of these similar conversations. So this is about a Christian group called The Family, and The Family has an enormous amount of influence in Washington, D.C. in particular. They have a building called the C Street House, I'm pretty sure, which is basically a dorm room for congressmen where the most debauchery goes on possible, but it's basically just a flat where if you are a Christian and you believe in what the family is saying, and if you're a politician, it is to your advantage to be a member of this group because these motherfuckers are rich and they can literally make political careers.
Not put on, but they sort of started like the White House prayer breakfast.
No, that's theirs. Yeah. That's 100%, which every president has spoken at since they started it.
Yep.
To give you a scale of like the infiltration. The people that are in this thing are they. So it's right now it's the guy's son, but there was like an older pastor who was like the original pastor, and this guy was the religious advisor for this president, that president, this high-ranking, political person, and this motherfucker would just straight up, like, his taped sermons that are now on the internet where he's talking like, Hitler, Pol Pot, Mao. These people weren't bad people. They were doing God's will, and sometimes, common people get crushed when you're enacting God's will. This is how these people think. These are the words that they listen to.
Yep.
I don't, if I were to go to a church, any church in this city right now, I doubt I'd be sitting next to any Congress people or, House of representatives.
Yep.
They're all in these churches listening to these things. The mentality of, you didn't get elected, God chose you.
Yeah.
Like this is what he would say, and this is what some of these fucking, literally some of the people who are in these buildings right now, this is what they believe. They don't believe they were elected. They believe they were selected by God, and because they were selected by God, they're allowed to do whatever they want, and that they can't be held liable in the eyes of God for anything, murder included.
Right. So I think one of the other things that I'm interested about with this group is, how exactly did Schaefer wind up getting in trouble? Because I think with a lot of these organizations, like, the ideology changes hands, but all these things kind of come to an end at some point because whoever leads it sort of gets out ahead of themselves or gets maybe even a little too crazy even for the system to continue supporting them.
Yeah, no.
Sure. His time ran out, like a lot of them do,
Well, and ultimately too, like, the lie this foul can only be perpetuated for so long. At some point, something's going to give, someone's going to crack, someone is not going to be able to take it, someone's going to escape. I've got this pulled up right here. We can go over the specifics of his situation. But so basically, Pinochet was his buddy. And Pinochet was the dictator in charge of Chile and was basically the guy who
for a hot minute.
Yeah, he was basically the guy who was greenlighting all of this shit. But basically, he steps down, and this kind of, I guess I'll just read this straight. That makes sense. Patricio Aylwin cut off the state funding for Schaefer's Hospital, revoking its nonprofit charitable status, and audited the colony's business. In 91, Schaefer privatized his various enterprises, German Chancellor Helmut Kohl visited Chile. He said that Chile needed to open the colony, but nothing further. Schaefer then mobilized the local residents to demonstrate against the closing of his hospital until the Chilean government reopened it, and then children were admitted to the colony as the colony itself had no offspring. And then Schaefer started abusing children immediately, because that's what this whole thing was. It was just an abuse farm for him. So basically 26 children who attended the free clinic report their abuse, and that's when his shit starts to unravel. So again, he just got a little too bold.
Right.
You know?
They all do.
And it makes sense. This is especially in terms of like the criminal mindsets, it's like textbook. I'm going to do this. Oh, I got away with that, so I'm going to try for a little more. I got away with that. And you do that for so long, I'm untouchable. Like they actually start to think I'm untouchable. Nothing will happen to me. I'll just continue to do this.
And to some extent you are during
for a while,
For
a while, yeah. You know, another thing would be like a comparable scenario for like the drug world would be like Escobar or what's his name? Tunnel guy. Who's a tunnel guy?
Elon Musk.
Yeah. Yes. That's what this company is actually for. No, Chapo. There we go. El Chapo. But yeah, you know, like you can only pay off the cops for so long, especially if the guy in charge of the government is cool with you, you're good.
Yep.
As soon as he's not in control, as soon as there's a change of command, all the handshake deals that you had no longer hold up.
Yep.
And in his case, again, like it was just prolific. I don't know how he was finding time to sleep with all the shit that he was doing between the torture and other types of abuse, as well as also running this thing and being like the face of this whole place, being, you know, the guy in charge, the Jim Jones. Basically that is when it all collapses.
You would think that by the time, because this started in the early 60s, you would think that by the time the Rajneeshis got to Oregon, that there would have been some kind of lesson in there, like maybe don't let them set up everything of their own volition. But we tried to play like, no, we're really about that religious freedom, but only if they stay out of the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And eventually they stopped staying out of the way because they felt like it was their shit. You know what I'm saying? This one's different because they had real power structure backing, whereas the Rajneeshis just sort of bullied their way into where they were. These guys had real structural support.
Well, and you know, they lucked out with the common link in between the two governments. Like they were already ideologically very similar. I think that's something that took me a minute to like ingest. Many countries in South America were ideologically already on the same page as the Nazis. They had zero fucking problem with bringing them over, giving them safe haven in the same way that our country did. Russia, when Russia took all the Nazi scientists that they acquired, they gave them nothing. They beat all the information they could beat out of them, and then they kicked them back to Germany penniless. Russia's like the only group of folks that dealt with them appropriately. And because their behavior was enabled even after the war, it gets into this, like, dude, this is like a private concentration camp.
Yeah.
That's effectively what this is. And the Nazis were not the first, and they definitely are not the last people to employ the tactics of concentration camps or work camps or death camps.
Scientology is doing it right now.
It's real shit.
Right this moment. There's some Scientologists in a fucking labor camp.
Dude, Going Clear, Leah Remini's, what's her shit? Whatever her show is called, it's incredible. But yeah, that's when is the government going to do something about Scientology? I don't know. Scientology beat the IRS.
Well, I think it's just that, like, here at least, it's so hard to have any kind of reckoning with like religious behavior because it's so a part of our system that it's hard for us to call it out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. That's why I was saying before, America's still a Christian nation.
Yeah.
As much as we want to say there's freedom of religion, it's freedom of religion with in the context of as long as, Christ and Christianity isn't being assaulted or offended. Anything that offends or assaults Christianity, well, that's not acceptable religion.
Right.
I've heard a lot of people say this, but it becomes clearer the older I get. We don't necessarily have freedoms here. We have privileges. We don't have freedoms like the idea or concept of freedom. We have privileges, freedoms within certain boundaries, and whatever that's required when you have this many people together. But in any scenario, when you start saying you can and can't think that, or this is okay and that is not, ultimately that always fucking comes to a head. There's no scenario where anyone could do whatever they want and everyone's happy. There's no scenario where people can do nothing and no one will still be happy. Right. So it's just like it's a problem that we have to deal with the more people exist on this planet. But it's just one of those things where it's like we're never all going to be happy. We all need to get a lot more okay with fucking sacrificing some of my wants and my needs for the collective good here, I don't agree with any of these people. I don't agree with Nazism. I don't agree with racial superiority. I don't believe in superiority in general, or making people feel inferior and yourself superior. I've never really ascribed to that. I don't really like it.
Part of what we hate, we get annoyed about we both get annoyed about with the music industry, right? Is that fucking in the esoteric sense, but then also in like the dickheads that we had to deal with, like the egos and attitudes that we had to deal with. I don't like it. And I don't align any of my life with it, but I also understand that it is important that we still talk about shit like this. And it's important that we still are aware of these things, because if we're not aware of them, we're not going to know how to deal with them. Yeah. If we forget about them entirely, we're not going to recognize them. Well, and that's the importance of like when you see a religious group or a cult like doing a book burning, it's like, oh, don't think about other stuff. When you see in Florida, they're sort of rewriting our history around racism and slavery. It's like, don't think about what really happened, because we want you to do it our way. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's unfortunately
this way's nicer. Yeah. This way's nicer. Yeah. And I guess this world isn't nice. Yeah. This isn't a nice place. Yeah. I'm not even talking about wars.
We have nice moments.
There's nice moments. There's beautiful moments. Life is beautiful in many different ways. But if you look at just general existing on this planet, it ain't easy, and it's never nice. Yeah. And nature is not nice. Yeah. And we're not so different from that. We have these nice buildings. We have these nice clothes. We're still fucking animals here, and we still behave like animals most of the time. Yep. In every different way. I don't know. For me, it's one of those things where it's like, if we really want to live in a country where there's freedom of thought, freedom of speech, we have to be okay with the idea that there's going to be some shit I don't like. Yep. That's the whole point. Yep. That's the whole point. I want to hear shit I don't like so that I can go over my thoughts in my head. I can process why I feel the way that I do and reaffirm the things that I feel and why I feel them, because I'm being challenged. Yep. That's the being challenged, the critical application of the thought. That's the thing that they don't want. Right. That's the thing that they're trying to kill off. Yeah. And
with fear, with whatever.
Even with this podcast, dude, I did a whole podcast 2 weeks ago about directed energy weapons, because there's been like a whole bunch of conversations about that. And dude, I was looking up shit like known directed energy weapons on Wikipedia, and I tried to upload the shit to TikTok and it got flagged. Right. It's like, dude, I'm looking at a Wikipedia page right now. Yeah. This isn't this. I'm not making this up. This is an actual thing that we have, and it can do these things. Yeah. But because of whatever stigma that has or whatever threat that might pose, it's a community guidelines violation. But I don't know. That's, for me, one of the reasons why we would be stuck at a goddamn show and we'd be talking about the Nazis is because this shit it's important to me that we look at our fucking history and we understand. I want some context, and what we didn't get in our history classes, what we don't get on our fucking news shows, our context. Yep. We get the whatever idea that the company that owns that news station wants to put out there.
And we get whatever kind of reactionary viewpoint is going to get eyes on it, whether it's eyes of the people who agree with it or outrage eyes.
Absolutely.
Because outrage eyes are eyes too.
Dude, and I mean, if you listen to the mentality of the modern media, their goal is clicks.
Yep.
They don't care. They don't care about misinformation. They'll happily run a story that they haven't verified, and they might not even issue an apology if it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Very
rarely will someone get fired because they said some dumb shit on the news.
Yeah.
It happens, but doesn't happen as often as it should.
Yeah.
And we're they bank on the fact that most people aren't going to read further.
And sometimes it's not even that the story that they're telling is false. It's that there's 100 stories. And they're all really important, but what's the one that is going to get the most people fixated on it? And at least in modern America, that's generally Trump. So Fox loves talking about him because they know their base loves him. CNN, MSNBC love talking about him because they know that everyone's going to go, oh, this fucking guy. Yeah. I got to watch this shit. Yeah. Even though there was other real life shit that was important to cover, we're talking about this fucking asshole again.
Yeah.
Because we know everyone wants to know.
Yeah, dude, for sure.
And I think that a lot of times things that are important to cover, people that are being like victimized in America gets looked over in mainstream media specifically because of those incentives, that views are the incentive, and the only incentive.
Yeah, that's the sole purpose. Yeah. Anymore. There may have been a time when news had some kind of serious integrity about informing the people, but anymore it's clicks.
There's great journalists, by the way. I'm a fucking independent sports journalist, so I'm not shitting on journalists, but when you have large publicly traded companies,
it's global corps. Yeah. Global corps. I have a hard time finding there to be objectivism when the company that owns that media company is a company that also makes war machines.
Yep.
I'm immediately going to think that they're probably trying to advance the agenda of war because that's good for business.
Yep.
Why else own a media company if I can't advertise for things that benefit me? So,
yeah.
And that's, another thing about this country in particular that I always have to remind myself of. It's the capitalist country. Everything has to make money.
Yeah.
Right. We have to be generating money of some kind. All the taxes that we have to pay, that's generates money for them somehow. No corporation that owns a media conglomerate is worried about the public good.
Yeah.
They don't care. It's not on their fucking radar. It's not the business they're in.
Yep.
They're in the business of selling washers and dryers and advertising time and clicks. So I don't know. For me, the reason that I like talking about these things and the reason I like using the most generic ways to research them is just to accentuate the fact that this shit isn't mysterious.
No.
This shit isn't hard to find. This is one Google search away. And if you just start Google searching, you find that.
And by the way, if you don't think it's impacting your life, it fucking is, bro.
100%. That's why the whole Operation Paperclip, like I've been beating that one into the fucking ground.
Yeah.
But we took Nazi scientists who were doing some dirty shit and we gave them very comfortable lives here in America to them so they could continue doing their dirty shit here.
Yep.
And there's no way that you can say that didn't in some way influence the future of American behavior over the course of the next 50 years. And that is also why it's so obvious to me why nobody wants to
this is just an export of ours.
Yeah.
This 100%. Is one of the things we export.
100%.
You know what I mean?
100 fucking percent. We're like I was saying before, like they're not going to go down there and try and break this up.
Right.
They're not going to do that, until those fascist dictators start nationalizing all the exports of that country, and then that starts to hurt the American economy. And like all these, there's this guy named Alan Dulles who was in charge of the CIA during this time, and he steps down. He retires, but effectively the thread is he retires because he held a interest in this thing called the United Fruit Company. And it was a company in South America that was a major exporter of fruit. And there's the theory that he basically was at least one of the proxy wars that was conducted down there was so that they wouldn't nationalize the United Fruit Company so he could still keep making money. This is the game that we're in, right? And what it becomes very clear to me why they don't want to talk about these things, why we're not taught about them in school, is because when you start to look at how dirty it is and has always been, it becomes super clear that it's a game that you don't even know the rules to.
You're not such an obedient soldier.
Yeah, no.
You really aren't.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a lot of our generation, like the older generations. We were just talking about this, that, there's a certain mentality about, no, you just do what you got to do to get it done.
Kill yourself if you have to, beat yourself to the ground.
Yeah.
Got to get the job done.
Right. But that doesn't necessarily apply if you're looking at like the bigger, like, so who am I putting myself at risk for?
Yeah, right.
Who is that for? It's not.
Who is in charge here, and why are they not doing this with me?
Yeah.
Dude, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's so true.
It's the funny thing is, when you start asking that specific question, you can't ever find the fucking person who's accountable.
Yeah.
Ever. You start finding that question, whether it's on the small scale of us working an event, or if it's on the large scale of like, who owns this company?
Yeah.
Who is doing this right now? Who is creating this fucking scenario in this area of the world for this?
Did you watch Telemarketers?
Primo.
Perfect example.
Fucking primo.
Perfect fucking example, bro.
Well, and there's another hilarious fucking microcosm, dude. They were using the fucking name they legitimately were making it seem as if they were police officers working for the Fraternal Order of the Police.
Yeah.
And it's because a certain number of Fraternal Order of Police fucks were getting kickbacks.
Yeah.
Then we don't care. We're getting more money than we would have done if we had done it ourselves. You can keep the rest.
And you saw the back end. They're using people's stupidity to be like, people are disrespecting the cops. Give us some money. And you're the fucking schmuck paying them.
Have you ever thought about telemarketing for the Fraternal Order of Police?
Dude, I think I'd be great.
Could do it.
I think I'd be great, bro.
No.
Hey, listen, pal, we got to stop the bullshit.
Can I count on $100 fucking from you today, sir?
What do we feel comfortable with?
Dude, that's fucking so spot on. That documentary is incredible, though. And yeah, it's another, like, dude, at every layer, they don't want people critically thinking, because you don't have to ask that many questions to start getting into some fucked territory.
Yep.
And whatever you're trying to get to the bottom of, you start asking a couple questions, and it just, for me, it never shocks me how quickly and depraved it gets. The people who are involved, or the true level of sinister behavior involved. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just funny, especially in terms of politics. Like, how many times have you or I witnessed a political scandal, but how many politicians have ever gone to fucking jail?
It's very rare. Very rare.
It rarely happens. Yeah.
It's very small occasions.
And there's definitely people out there who are fucking committing crimes. And it can be confirmed by whatever news source you prefer. We can pull up the article, confirm this person was doing something they weren't supposed to. Why aren't they going to jail?
Yeah.
Well, it's because they fucking make the rules.
Yeah.
They make the rules. They've got all the friends. They're a part of the
dirt
club.
On the people who make the rules.
No, really. That is the game that's being played, right? Yeah. And the media plays its role in that, but that is the game that's being played. And I feel like we get played thinking that the game is work really hard your whole life and you'll have something to show for it at the end when you retire. That's the lie, the game that we are sold, but it's not the game we're playing. So we're trying to play by those rules on a game that those rules don't even apply. And it's not to say that anyone should be going out there and doing shady or sinister shit. It's just, it makes sense why working really hard until you can retire isn't going to happen for us.
Right.
It's very obvious to me why that is the way that is. It's very obvious to me why the lie that we are sold becomes more and more unraveled every day. And again, like, I'm not I don't know. I'm not trying to fucking bring the mood down here or anything, but
yeah, we've been talking about a lot of cheerful shit like Nazi prison camps in South America.
But see, here's the fucking thing, dude. Here's the fucking thing, and this is I've always felt this way. Most of our life, we try not to think about the fucked shit, and I get why people don't want to live there. I don't want to live there.
Definitely not full time.
No, it's not a good place to
I got
be.
a timeshare there.
Yes, 3 months out of the year.
Yeah.
That's when I occupy space there. But this, like, even doing the podcast, it's like, all right, let me relegate. I'm going to get an hour a week where I'll commit to just looking into some of this shit and then be able to step away from it. Most people are never going to do that because it's just much easier to not care. It's much easier to not look into history. It's much easier.
Just go to Chili's and get your jalapeno poppers and just live life
until next weekend. And again, like, there's nothing wrong with that. And at times I feel that same way too. But if we want a different situation, we're all going to have to start thinking and at a bare minimum talking about it. And so for that, I want to thank you for coming into here.
Hell yeah, dude.
Going down this fucking terrible rabbit hole. And
I love rabbit holes, bro.
We'll have to pick an equally maybe we pick like one of the tangential things, maybe the rat lines specifically.
I love that.
Something related to this. But dude, yeah, thank you so much for coming all the way out here and coming on this shit.
It's my fucking guy right here, man.
Dude. And honestly, I remember when you were talking about doing the podcast, I did all the images and stuff, and I was like, 100% do that. And when I was doing the podcast, when you found out I was doing it, you're like, you need to fucking keep up with that. Been doing it for a year. So
crazy.
Just a year. So I got to fucking thank you and credit you for that. And of course, give your shit one more shout out. We'll put the stuff in the links.
Man. Follow me, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you do your podcasting. Follow me at the Slip and Weave Podcast. Follow ITR Boxing. Head to OFTV, OnlyFans TV, to check out the first episode of The Fight Life with Shadeja Green. Second episode's coming soon. And I appreciate you, my guy.
Fuck yeah, dude. Well, to everybody, this has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast.
Buckle up, Buttercup.
Buckle up, Buttercups. We'll catch you later.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva. That's obnoxious. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. Literally no one cares. For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod. When will this end? Thank you for listening. Now get back to work. Move it along, buddy.